Hey there, let's talk measures of center. Okay, so when we talk about the middle of a data set, we want to talk about the mode. I mean, it's not really a measure of center, but it does definitely tell us what the data looks like or what it's doing. The mode is going to be the number that shows up the most. You could have more than one mode. It has two modes. It's sometimes called bimodal. And we tend to group it with median and mean. So median is going to be the number that is standing in the center of a data list. So let's say you have something in order that's like a number here, a number here, a number here, a number here. If you wanted to find the median, it would be the number standing in the middle. You would cross off the ends until you get right to the center. You can think about it as the number standing in the middle. And then the mean, I want you to think about the mean as the average. It's where you sum all the data points together and then divide by the number of values. It is definitely affected by outliers. Think about if you have a really huge number, that's definitely going to pull the mean up. If you have a really low number, that's going to pull the mean down. Let's look at what mean and standard deviation look like in a data set. So in the purple table right here, I have a whole bunch of data values. I'm going to enter them into an X list. So the way that you get to this screen that's over here on my calculator is you do home, go to the green lists and spreadsheet icon, and then it should pop up. But I already had it open, so I'm gonna just go ahead and go back to it. Okay, so you're going to add a new list that looks like this. You put a little X up top and you just start typing in all the data points that are here, okay? It auto-populated it because I already have it over here, but you would just be doing it manually. If I were you, I would cross off each data point as I enter it just so I don't lose my spot. Go ahead and pause the video and enter all these data points into an X list spreadsheet. Pause. And we're back. Okay, so now that you have everything listed, I want you to add a calculator page, and we're going to go to menu 6, 1 for stat calculations, oops, 1 for one variable statistics. So we have our X list will be X, and we're going to hit OK. All right, so if we are looking for the mean, we're going to look for the X bar, this piece right here, and it is 55.475. I know we're always supposed to round to 3 sig figs in IB, so let's go ahead and write up top, X bar is equal to 55.5. And then for our standard deviation, on our one-var stats, in IB, we always use the population standard deviation, which is denoted by the sigma, not the S. We do not use the S. He is a sample standard deviation. You learn the difference between the two when you take AP stats. But right now, just know that we always want the sigma. So we've got 7.24737. So we're going to go ahead and do 3 sig figs there. And we get the standard deviation is 7.25. Okay, so this is when we just type all the data points in, and we have every specific different data point, and we type it in and we calculate the one variable statistics for the data. There is another way to approximate the mean and the standard deviation of a data set, and that is with something called grouped data. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the difference between, or not the difference, but yeah, what it looks like when we calculate the mean and the standard deviation in grouped data. So let's go ahead and take all the data points up here, and we're going to group them into this table down here. So I'm going to go through and look and see all the points where I see a 35 to a 40. So it'd be like 1 and 2. Notice how I'm not including 40 in my upper bound, so it would just be the 2 data points where there's 30s. I'm going to do the same thing for 40 to 45. You can go ahead and pause the video and do this yourself. Just be careful of the upper and lower bounds. You are including him here, you are not including him here, you are including him here, you are not including him here. Pause the video, do it yourself, and meet me back in a second. Hello and welcome back. I hope you have found the following frequencies in each of the modal classes. They're called modal classes, and it's just, they split up the data into a few different categories. It looks like they're counting by 5s. So the calculation of the mean and variance for grouped data is like the calculation for raw data. This would be the raw data. This would be the grouped data. But the difference lies in the use of frequencies. Notice what this column is labeled, frequency, instead of individual data points. A comparison is given below. So we have the X-bar statistic, aka the mean, calculated as follows with raw data. So we sum up all the X's and then we divide by the number of X's with raw data. With grouped data, what we are going to want to do is take the midpoint of this guy and multiply it by the frequency of the numbers in that modal class, and then divide by the total number of items, okay? This sounds a little crazy here, but we're gonna like go through an example down here, okay? This is just all of the math mumbo jumbo talking about what happens, okay? So we do midpoint times frequency divided by n. And this is what we're talking about when we say grouped data with intervals. That's what M sub I is. He's going to be the midpoint of each interval, okay? This is the standard deviation squared, aka the variance, right? And what it's saying is, what is a data point's distance from the mean? We square that distance from the mean and then we divide by the total number of data points. So that's just going to be a measure of how spread out the data is, how far each individual piece of data is from the actual mean, okay? In grouped data, they calculated the same thing as they do with raw data. However, they use the midpoint of the interval again. So you can walk through this table and kind of see how all this stuff is calculated. This is the long way of what your calculator is doing, but you can basically find the midpoint of each group, right? So let's go back to our table up here, right? And you can enter the following information into your calculator and it approximates the mean and the standard deviation much faster than if you did it by hand with all one-var stats. Also, sometimes we don't even have the raw data listed out. We just have the group data. So here's how you would do it, right? You would go back to your mid-intervals that you had before and you would, sorry, I'm trying to look and see where I entered this stuff. Oh, okay. So I typed, or I labeled this column living expenses, right? And I found the midpoint of the interval. And I did it for this interval, this interval, this interval, this interval, this interval. Oh, excuse me. This interval. And this interval. And then I went ahead and took these as my X column, kind of, living expenses, right? And then I put these pieces into another column, my Y column, and I labeled it frequency. So it was how many times we had a number that was in this modal class. How many times do we have a number in this modal class, okay? And then you can take this grouped data and calculate, there we go, and calculate the one-bar statistics for this guy. However, you're going to do it a little differently because now we have an X list and a frequency list. Sorry, my X was LE. So I would have living expenses and the frequency list. I would hit OK. And now I will have a grouped approximation of the mean, which would be 50.06, which is what they calculated here. And then the standard deviation is the square root of the variance. So I would end up with 7.51, which is what I get over here on my calculator, okay? So the numbers in the table above are estimates of the mean, the variance, and the standard deviation. As you will notice, they are not equal to the values we calculated earlier, but they are close. The reason for that difference is with grouping, we lose the detail in each interval. We know there were two pieces that had that were in the 30s, right? But we don't know what their values were. So this is a way to find the standard deviation and the mean of grouped data. And the way you do that is just with one var stats, but now you have an X list and its frequency.